Carl Jung left a warning for empaths, a warning that most ignore until it is too late. They are feeding on your light, and that feeling, the one you get when you walk away from a conversation feeling heavy, tired, or strangely guilty without knowing why, that is the evidence. This message is for you. If you have ever comforted a friend all night and woke up drained, wondering why you felt guilty for needing rest, if you have ever taken a phone call from a parent and hung up with a stomach full of knots, blaming yourself for being too cold, if you have ever walked out of a workplace meeting more exhausted than after actual work, telling yourself, maybe I'm too sensitive, you are not imagining things. You are not weak. You are not cursed. You are being targeted, consciously or unconsciously, by what Jung described as emotional parasites. These are not monsters in the shadows. They are people you know. They smile. They share their pain. They lean on you. They are often charming. They may even appear wounded, desperate for healing. But here is the terrifying truth. Some of them have unconsciously learned to survive by draining the emotional energy of others. And who do they seek? Empaths. People like you, whose light burns the brightest. The process is invisible. It does not look like abuse at first. It looks like closeness. It looks like intimacy. It looks like love. But slowly, it becomes something else. You enter what I call a drain loop. The cycle where you give, they take, you collapse. And instead of pulling back, you feel guilty and give even more. The loop feeds on your compassion until your body starts breaking down. Fatigue, tension, brain fog, even illness. Think about your own life. Have you ever noticed that with certain people, you always feel worse after meeting them? Not just tired, but as if a part of your spirit has been siphoned away. That is not coincidence. That is a sign. Jung called it a form of shadow projection. They offload what they cannot handle in themselves and convince you it is your responsibility. Let me give you real scenarios. In love, you fall for someone who seems deep, sensitive, broken. They share their wounds, and you feel chosen to be their healer. At first it feels special, but then you realize you spend nights calming their storms. And when you finally feel exhausted, you call yourself selfish for not giving more. This is not love. This is energy parasitism in family. Your mother or father calls you in crisis over and over again. You listen for hours. If you do not answer, you are made to feel guilty for abandoning them. After each call, you feel heavy, guilty, drained. You confuse this guilt with devotion. That is not devotion. That is emotional hijacking. In the workplace, a colleague always has drama. They sit at your desk, unload their struggles, and then leave. When you need support, they vanish. And you tell yourself, they must be busy. But deep inside, you know something is wrong. You are caught in a one-way transaction. Your energy out, nothing in return. This is the paradox every empath faces. The more you give, the emptier you feel. The more you try to help, the more lost you become. Your greatest gift, compassion, has been turned into a weapon against you. And here is the hardest part to accept. It is not always malicious. These emotional vampires often do not even realize what they are doing. They are unconscious. But unconscious feeding still drains you all the same. Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." For empaths, fate looks like endless exhaustion, broken boundaries, and relationships built on guilt. But fate can be rewritten, because the moment you recognize the pattern, you begin to reclaim your power. The guilt you feel after saying no, that is not weakness. That is the withdrawal symptom of an energy parasite losing supply. Psychologists call it manipulation. Jung would call it the extinction burst, when the shadow resists losing its host. They will call you cold. They will call you selfish. They will say, "You are not the person I thought you were." And that, paradoxically, is the clearest sign your boundaries are working. Protecting your energy is not selfish. It is survival. Your light is not a buffet for others. It is the lighthouse meant to guide your own path. So let us dive deeper into how these energy parasites operate, how to spot their tactics, and how to end the drain loops once and for all. without hardening your heart, without losing the gift that makes you extraordinary. Jung's research revealed something most people never see. Empaths are not just unlucky magnets for difficult personalities. They are actively targeted. The feeding isn't random. It follows a cycle. And once you recognize this cycle, you begin to see every draining relationship for what it truly is. It starts with recognition. Energy parasites can sense you almost instantly. You walk into a room and they notice you before you even speak. They can feel your openness, the way you lean in when others pull back, the way you smile longer, listen deeper, and take on responsibility without being asked. To them, you shine like a beacon. That glow tells them you will give more than you take. And so without saying a word, they select you. You don't notice it in that moment. You only notice later when your body feels heavy, when your mind feels hijacked, when you walk away more tired than when you arrived. The next step is the wound display. They don't come demanding your energy. They come wrapped in pain. They tell you about heartbreak, about childhood trauma, about all the struggles no one else understands. And because you are empathic, you feel special, you feel chosen. Finally, someone trusts you enough to reveal their depths. But this is not intimacy. This is strategy, whether they realize it or not. The display of wounds hooks you into their story, making it nearly impossible for you to walk away. You've seen it in love. The partner who pours out their life story on the first date, who seems fragile and broken in a way that awakens your healer's instinct. You've seen it in family, when a parent calls in tears, reminding you of their sacrifices, hinting that without you they might not survive. You've seen it at work, when a colleague dramatizes every failure and sighs loudly until you ask what's wrong, pulling you into hours of unpaid emotional labor. In each case, the performance of pain creates an opening, and through that opening, they begin to feed. Once your empathy is activated, the drain loop begins. They return again and again with new crises. Every conversation is a fire to put out, every interaction a demand on your energy. And you respond because it feels like love, like duty, like loyalty. But slowly, something shifts. You start canceling your own plans because you are too exhausted. You start saying yes when every part of you wants to say no. You start blaming yourself for not giving enough, even when you've given everything. This is the paradox of the empath. The more you give, the emptier you feel. The more you try to help, the more lost you become. Think of the partner who calls at 2 a.m., sobbing, and when you ask for rest, they accuse you of being cold, so you stay awake, sacrificing your own health just to keep them calm. Think of the parent who leaves message after message, escalating each time you don't respond, and when you finally pick up, they unleash every fear, every frustration, every ounce of guilt. You hang up heavy, but instead of anger, you feel shame. Think of the coworker who monopolizes your breaks, offloading endless drama, and when you try to talk about your own struggles, they vanish. And you tell yourself, they must be busy. Over time, you start to confuse being needed with being loved, exhaustion with intimacy, and guilt with devotion. The final stage is normalization. By now, you are depleted, but you've been convinced this depletion is proof of connection. You tell yourself love is sacrifice, that family means endless duty, that friendship is absorbing pain without question. You call your exhaustion sensitivity. You blame yourself for being weak. But here is the truth. Your exhaustion is not weakness. It is evidence of theft. It is the shadow reversal, where the parasite projects their emptiness onto you until you believe the drain is normal, even sacred. And here lies the tragedy. Many empaths never break free because the guilt is unbearable. The idea of saying no feels like betrayal. The idea of setting boundaries feels cruel. So they stay in the loop until their health, their spirit, and their sense of self are burned away. But Jung discovered something revolutionary. He said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. For empaths, this means that your exhaustion is not just a symptom. It is a signal. It is your body's way of saying, wake up, you are being drained. And when you finally decide to set a boundary, the feeding does not stop quietly. It escalates. This is what I call the extinction burst. When you withhold supply, the parasite panics. They call you selfish. They insist you've changed. They accuse you of being cruel. Some may threaten self-harm, others may spread rumors. Every tactic is designed to pull you back into the loop. And this is where most empaths falter, mistaking manipulation for proof that they are wrong. But the opposite is true. Resistance is proof that you are right. Escalation is proof that your boundaries are working. Consider Sarah, who dated a man that constantly shared his pain but never supported her. When she stopped being his lifeline, he accused her of betrayal. In reality, she had stopped being his supply. Consider Michael, who grew up as his mother's emotional caretaker. When he finally set limits, she accused him of abandonment. But he was not abandoning her. He was saving himself. Consider Lisa, who endured years of being her colleague's therapist. When she refused to listen endlessly, the colleague gossiped that she was cold. But Lisa knew the truth. She wasn't cold. She was finally free. Energy parasites are not always evil. Most are unconscious, repeating patterns they never resolved in themselves. But unconscious or not, the result is the same. You are drained, guilty, and invisible. The challenge for empaths is not just recognizing the parasite. It is breaking the inner belief that love must always cost you your vitality, that worth must always be earned by sacrifice. That belief is the true prison. And Jung's final insight is this: you cannot heal someone by letting them feed on your essence. You cannot love someone back to wholeness by sacrificing your own. You cannot save someone who refuses to face their shadow. Protecting your light is not selfish. It is survival. It is the beginning of freedom. Recognizing the drain loop is only the beginning. Awareness without action changes nothing. Jung warned that if you do not learn to protect your energy, others will consume it. The question is, how do you stop the feeding without turning into someone cold and hardened? How do you remain compassionate without becoming an endless supply? There is a framework I use, and I call it GIFT, because your empathy truly is a gift, but it only works when you learn how to use it wisely. GIFT stands for ground yourself, identify signals, form boundaries, and transform guilt. Grounding is the first step. Empaths lose themselves in other people's emotions so easily. You walk into a room and suddenly you're carrying sadness, anger, or anxiety that isn't even yours. Without grounding, you cannot tell the difference. A simple pause can change everything. 2 slow breaths. A quick body check. Name what you feel right now. My chest feels heavy. My shoulders are tense. I'm tired. That is your baseline, because if you don't anchor yourself, your system will be hijacked before you even notice. Next comes identifying signals. Your body knows the truth before your mind dares to admit it. Fatigue, headaches, foggy thinking, a sinking feeling before meeting a certain person. Those are not random. They are warnings. Think about the times you've canceled plans because you felt too tired, and then suddenly had energy again once you were free. That wasn't laziness. That was your body screaming, "This person drains me." Keep a small journal. After each important interaction, write just one word: energized, neutral, or drained. Within a week, you'll see the pattern. Certain names will always show up in the drained column. That is your evidence. That is your list of emotional vampires. But awareness is not enough. You have to form boundaries. This is where most empaths struggle. Saying no feels like betrayal. But boundaries are not walls. They are filters. They decide what gets in and what stays out. And here is the truth. When you set a boundary, the parasite will fight back. This is the extinction burst. They will accuse you. You've changed. You're selfish. You don't care anymore. Some will create emergencies. Some will threaten to hurt themselves. Every tactic has one purpose: to pull you back into the loop. You must expect this. Write it down and remember it. Resistance is proof that the boundary is working. Escalation is proof that the feeding has been interrupted. Their panic does not mean you are cruel. It means you have finally cut off their supply. So, what do these boundaries sound like? In love, it might be, I care about you, but I can't stay up all night talking. Let's talk tomorrow when I'm rested. In family, it could be, I love you, but I can't answer 10 calls a day. If it's urgent, leave one message and I'll respond when I can. At work, I hear that you're struggling, but I only have 5 minutes. Then I need to get back to my project. Notice these are short, clear, and calm. No paragraphs of justification, no apologies. Because every extra word is an opening for guilt to creep back in. And then comes the hardest part, transforming guilt. The moment you say no, the guilt will hit like a wave. Your chest tightens. You feel selfish, cruel, even unlovable. But guilt is not truth. Guilt is programming. You were trained to believe that your worth comes from service. You survived childhood by soothing others. But survival strategies are not life strategies. The only way through is to reframe the guilt. When the inner voice says, I'm selfish for saying no, you respond, no, I'm responsible. I can't pour from an empty cup. When it says, I'm abandoning them, you answer, no, I'm teaching them to carry their own emotions. When it says, they'll hate me, you remind yourself, anyone who only loves me when I am exhausted doesn't truly love me. Each time you flip the script, the guilt weakens, and eventually, guilt transforms into clarity. Let's make this even more practical. Try the 24-hour rule. When someone demands your attention immediately, don't respond right away. Say, I'll get back to you tomorrow. This stops emotional hijacking in the moment. Use the 3-sentence limit when someone begins trauma dumping. I'm sorry you're going through that. I hope you find support. I need to step away now. That's enough. End your day with an energy check. Ask yourself, did my interactions leave me energized, neutral, or drained? Adjust tomorrow accordingly, and keep a no-guilt journal. Each time you set a boundary, write down what you protected, your sleep, your peace, your focus. Remind yourself that saying no is really saying yes to yourself. At first, this feels brutal. You will tremble when you say no. You will lie awake wondering if you hurt someone. The parasite's extinction burst will make you doubt yourself. But then, something shifts. You realize that real friends respect your no. Real family accepts your limits. Real partners want you rested and alive, not broken and exhausted. And those who only loved your depletion begin to fall away. Yes, it hurts. But what you are losing is not love. It is dependency disguised as love. And in that empty space, something better appears. Genuine connection. Conversations that energize you instead of draining you. Relationships where care goes both ways. People who do not consume your light but reflect it back. Never forget, your empathy is a gift, not a sentence. Compassion without boundaries is self-destruction. Compassion with boundaries is wisdom. You do not need to dim your light. You need to direct it. Not toward those who treat it as an endless supply, but toward those who honor it and give back. Every no you speak to an emotional vampire is a yes to your own life. Every time you break a drain loop, you reclaim another piece of yourself. Protecting your energy is not selfish. It is survival. And survival is the first step toward freedom. Breaking free from energy parasites is not the end of the story. It is the beginning. Because once you stop being drained, a new question rises. Who will you become now? Jung believed that growth does not come from avoiding pain, but from transforming it. For empaths, that transformation leads to 3 distinct stages of evolution. The first stage is the unconscious empath. At this level, you feel everything but understand nothing. You move through the world as an open antenna. Every mood, every whisper of emotion around you floods into your system, and you mistake it all for your own. The unconscious empath says, I don't know why I'm always so tired. Or, maybe I'm just too sensitive. Or, I can't say no, it feels cruel. This is the empath caught in endless drain loops, always available, always absorbing, always exhausted. Yet instead of recognizing the pattern, they blame themselves. Think of Anna, who spends her evenings listening to her roommate's problems. She pays the bills, cooks the meals, provides endless comfort. By the weekend, she is depressed, empty, and confused. She doesn't see that her exhaustion is not random. It is the cost of being unconscious. The second stage is the conscious empath. This is when awareness begins. You start noticing signals. You begin to see that not every emotion you feel belongs to you. You track which people leave you energized and which people leave you hollow. The conscious empath says, "I'm starting to see the pattern," or "I know I need boundaries, but it still feels hard," or "Sometimes I say no, but the guilt nearly kills me." This is progress, but it is unstable. Some days you are clear, other days you collapse. Some boundaries hold, others dissolve. Think of James, who knows that his colleague always leaves him drained. He sets limits, but then over-explains, apologizes, and lets the door reopen. He is learning, but not yet steady. The conscious empath is like someone who has read the manual but is still stalling the car. The third stage is the sovereign empath. This is the transformation Jung hinted at, the point where you no longer believe you must be needed in order to be loved. The sovereign empath says, "I can feel deeply without losing myself. I know the difference between compassion and codependency. I choose where my energy goes, and I don't apologize for it." At this level, you are no longer prey. Emotional vampires may test you, but their hooks no longer land. You can listen without absorbing. You can care without collapsing. You can love without erasing yourself. Think of Maria, who grew up as her mother's emotional caretaker. For decades, she believed that devotion meant exhaustion. When she began setting limits, her mother accused her of betrayal. Maria stayed calm. She realized the accusation was proof of her growth. Today, she spends her energy building a business, nurturing friendships, and creating a life that feeds her. She still loves her mother, but she no longer sacrifices her soul. You will know you are becoming sovereign when subtle shifts begin to appear. You stop apologizing for your boundaries. Instead of paragraphs of justification, a simple "I can't" is enough. The guilt that once crushed you begins to fade into peace. At first, saying no feels brutal, but over time it feels like relief. You start attracting different people, those who respect your limits and want to meet you as equals. You find yourself valuing quality over quantity. One authentic friend feels more nourishing than 10 draining connections. And most of all, you feel stronger, not colder. Protecting your energy does not harden your heart. It clarifies your love. But this transformation demands courage, because some relationships will not survive it. Partners who relied on your self-erasure will fall away. Friends who needed you as a therapist will accuse you of betrayal. Family members who fed on your guilt may call you selfish. And here lies the paradox. That loss is not tragedy. It is liberation. Every person who leaves because you stopped being their supply is making room for someone who can meet you with reciprocity. Yes, there will be nights of loneliness. You will question yourself. You will hear echoes of old programming that told you your needs do not matter. But loneliness is temporary. Sovereignty is permanent. Every time you break a drain loop, you retrain your nervous system. I am safe when I choose myself. Every time you resist an extinction burst, you prove to yourself, I am not cruel, I am strong. Every time you stand firm in your sovereignty, you shine a light for other empaths who are still trapped in guilt. Your empathy is not weakness. It is a superpower, but only when you learn to control it. Unconscious, it feels like a curse. Awakened, it becomes your crown. You do not need to stop feeling. You need to stop abandoning yourself. And when you do, you embody what Jung described as the greatest privilege of life, to become who you truly are. That is the sovereign empath, and that is who you were always meant to be. Jung left a final warning for empaths. It was not poetic. It was not comforting. It was terrifying in its honesty. He wrote that once you see the pattern, you cannot unsee it. Once you recognize the feeding, you cannot pretend it isn't happening. Once you taste freedom, you can never again return to emotional slavery. And that is both the gift and the burden of awakening. When you start protecting your energy, life changes. Not just your relationships, but your identity. You realize how much of your past was built on depletion. You see how many times you called exhaustion love, how many times you accepted guilt as loyalty, how many times you confused being needed with being valued. And once you see it, you cannot go back. Some people will beg you to return to the old you. They will say, you've changed. They will call you selfish, cold, or even cruel. They will remind you of everything you once gave, trying to hook you back into the drain loop. But those voices are not love. They are the extinction burst of an energy parasite losing access. They are the sounds of dependency cracking. You are not cruel for refusing to be consumed. You are courageous. Of course, this transformation has a cost. You will lose relationships. You will disappoint people. You will face nights of loneliness when you wonder if protecting yourself was worth it. But what you are losing is not love. It is bondage disguised as love. What you are shedding is not family or friendship. It is dependency wrapped in guilt. Think of it this way. A candle that burns itself down to give light eventually disappears. But a candle that guards its flame can light others for years. Protecting your energy is not abandoning others. It is ensuring you remain present, alive, and whole. Jung believed that the greatest privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. For empaths, that means becoming sovereign. Not a sponge for everyone's emotions. Not a martyr for other people's pain, but a person who feels deeply without losing themselves. The empowered empath knows that love without boundaries is not love. Compassion without limits is not compassion. And giving without balance is not generosity. It is self-erasure. And once you embody this, you are no longer an easy target. Emotional vampires may try, but their hooks don't land. You listen without absorbing. You empathize without overextending. You give without guilt. That is the ultimate protection. Not walls that keep everyone out, but clarity that lets only respect and reciprocity in. Jung wrote, "The greatest and most important problems of life are all fundamentally insoluble. They can never be solved, but only outgrown. You cannot solve the problem of energy parasites by trying to heal them. You cannot pour more light into someone determined to stay in shadow. You cannot give enough to make emptiness whole. The only way out is to outgrow the compulsion to be needed, to step out of the drain loops, to refuse the role of savior. When you do, something remarkable happens. You stop being prey, and you start becoming a mirror. Your sovereignty reflects back to others what they must face in themselves. Some will run, some will attack, but some, just a few, will awaken because of your example. And that is how your empathy becomes not depletion, but transformation. You are not alone in this. Thousands of empaths are waking up right now, refusing to be drained, refusing to carry what isn't theirs. Every time you set a boundary, you give silent permission to another empath to do the same. Your story matters. Your no matters. Your light matters. So here is Jung's warning, distilled into its simplest form. They are feeding on your light. They always have. But you have the power to stop it. Protecting your energy isn't selfish. It's survival. It's freedom. It's love in its truest form. Love that includes yourself. Remember this. You do not owe anyone your exhaustion. You owe yourself your life. Now, I want to hear from you. Write in the comments. What's one boundary you are ready to set to protect your light? Your answer might be the spark another empath needs to break free from their own drain loop. Your light is not a buffet. It is your compass. Guard it, honor it, and let it guide you, not into someone else's darkness, but into your own wholeness.